We're smokeless today, but that doesn't mean we're not going to have guests, and we welcome a new friend to the show, Payton Soicher of Rankings Right Now. And Payton, you reached out to me a few weeks ago, and we started talking. You have started Rankings Right Now, and it's a new website that I said earlier in the show when I was kind of introducing you. I said, I have to vet these things and check them out. And I was like, well, let's see how he's doing compared to other people who do the same thing. There's nobody who does the same thing that you're doing right now, and it's an idea that probably should have been done. So how did this get started with Rankings Right Now? And this is a great time to start it now that 12 teams matter in the rankings more than 4.
Right, exactly. And I felt the same way when I kind of stumbled into the idea. My dad went to Michigan State, so I was born brainwashed thinking that everything about Michigan State's the greatest thing ever. And in 2021, I was watching in week 12, Michigan State was playing Ohio State, and it was a big matchup. They were both top 10 teams at the time. Week 12, we're getting close to the college football playoff. And at halftime, Ohio State was beating Michigan State 49-0. And I'm just sitting there devastated on the couch, realizing that the national championship is completely out of reach now. The game is over. And my wife, kind of as a teaser to me, said, are they even going to be ranked in the top 25 anymore? And it kind of just got me thinking, that's a really good question. I wonder if anyone even does anything of this kind of nature. So I went online. I didn't see anything that really aligned with what I was thinking. And my background's in analytics and machine learning, and I kind of thought this might be a fun little project to do. And it took me about 2 years really to get the algorithm right and to get it into a point where I felt like, you know what, this actually might enhance my viewership of college football as the games are going on. Rankings are such a weird thing with college football, and I think really, if you think of any type of rankings, you kind of know what the playoffs are going to look like for the NFL, the MLB, the NBA. College football is the only one, and college basketball and college athletics, that you have a panel of people that make this decision. And as we saw with Florida State last year, they can decide however they want to decide. So it makes it so much more interesting and fun when you have a insight on based off of historical data of this is how they tend to vote. Maybe this is what you can expect going into the next release of the poll of the AP poll or the College Football Selection Committee, whoever it may be. So that's kind of how it got going. And then finally it got to a point where I was like, I want to share this with everybody and really make it more enjoyable for the college football fan.
Yeah, and it's really good stuff. You sent me kind of the first wave of this season. Florida State obviously involved in it. So a top 10 team that's projected and we've got a couple different graphics here. We couldn't fit a couple of them on, and we'll get to those in a second. But So for Florida State now, let's look at the top 10 team. They're 0-1. Now, their likelihood obviously has gone down. So how does your machine work at projecting for me, a person whose all his joy is wrapped up in them, what their future holds?
So right now, our algorithms are showing that as of right now, rankings right now, meaning this is what we project is going to happen here when the next release of the poll is going to happen. They're sitting at about 22. They were 21 yesterday until Kansas decided to obliterate Lindenwood, 500-0, whatever it felt like. So they're sitting at 22 right now. So I think they'll be somewhere in that 20 range. Predicting week 2 is the hardest by far. No one knows anything, right? We're all coming in fresh. Everyone thinks that they have a good idea of what to expect from their team. Everyone's opinions change immediately once you see that first quarter. Think of, whether it be CU or Michigan State or Florida State, your opinions immediately change because you just don't know what each season's going to bring. So week 2 by far is the most unpredictable. As we get a little bit further into the season, it becomes a little bit more stable and a little bit more understanding. But as of right now, assuming that Florida State beats Boston College this weekend, they're looking at somewhere in the low 20s.
All right. So as you project out this week, or this week you did a lot of what ifs on Rankings Right Now.
That's right.
So particularly around the game that Garrett, who's an LSU fan, we're watching the most, USC and LSU. So what are your what ifs on USC and LSU?
So as of right now, LSU is projected to beat USC. And I think the projection of that score, if I can find it real quick, it says LSU is supposed to beat USC 34-30. That's according to Vegas, right? So since we have this algorithm, you can play around in what if scenarios to say, well, what would actually happen if USC had the upset and we just flipped the scores? So if we go ahead and play around with that, we switch around a couple of scores, we let USC win that game. Now you're looking at right there where USC pops up to 14 and LSU drops down to 21. So this is the fun of this algorithm is, that field goal at the very end of the game that just missed. You can go ahead and go back into this algorithm and say, well, what would have actually happened if they had nailed that 40-yarder? And what would the rankings look like if that were to come? We as fans are only limited to these poll releases after all of the games have happened. So you don't really have a full understanding of, well, if I would have asked that poll in the middle of that game when we were winning, how would they have ranked us? We don't know as fans anymore. And that's what this algorithm's trying to uncover, give you a little bit more entertainment value in that. So that's what, if USC beats LSU, that's what the algorithm is expecting in terms of ranking conditions.
All right. I mean, so when they go the site, you have a lot of data you can plug in, so you can find out for whoever. And how long did it take you to get this algorithm and everything built?
2 years,
oh
plus.
My gosh.
Just playing with it, and with a lot of side projects, whatever you want to call it, you think it's going to be a piece of cake, and how hard could this possibly be?
Yeah.
Until 5 minutes in, you're like, okay, there's a reason why this might not exist right now, because it's very complicated. So I started with one algorithm, led into another one, and now I have algorithms stacked upon algorithms. And finally, about February of this year, I finally was able to show my wife and show the side-by-side comparisons of what really happened next to what we predicted was going to happen. And they were good enough that I felt confident sharing it with other people. So 2.5 years probably to finally get this right, to the point where this feels like it's realistic. And I hope I will continue to work on this algorithm and try and find better ways to come up with more accurate solutions.
I can't wait. I might make a pick'em and risk a week of the 10 games that we pick on pick'em. I'm gonna do, because you also have a cool thing of the projected scores of every week.
Yeah.
I'd like to run that through the games that we pick. Maybe I'll even just do it next week and
you can do that. Yeah.
Run it through and see how it goes. And see, maybe do it multiple weeks. But for example, Notre Dame and A&M, you have A&M winning that game 25-22, which if I sent that to College Station right now, they'd be like, oh, please.
Yeah.
God, don't be Catholic.
Vegas favors them right now. It's crazy right now.
Yeah. God, don't be Catholic tomorrow. But they that would be huge. Yeah, Vegas favors them. They're home. There's a lot of unknowns here. For example, you have a very close game with LSU and USC at 34-30. And there was another surprising one. Penn State and West Virginia. You have Penn State not covering at 8.5 right now at 29-21. Mm-hmm. But for that one, for West Virginia, what would happen if West Virginia wins that game?
Let's just run it right now. Hold on.
Okay.
I think I can go ahead. What do you want the score to be?
Let's just say West Virginia flip the score. Well, let's say it's 28-24.
28-24, West Virginia wins. Let's go ahead and run that simulation. If that happens, we have Penn State dropping down to 18. It does not look like West Virginia sneaks into the top 25. Now, that's the most difficult part that I was talking about, especially with week 2. You don't 26 through 130, no idea, right?
Yeah.
Are they in the 70s? Are they in the 40s? How do they now? If West Virginia really comes out and blows them out of the water, that might make everyone stop and think, these people actually, they've proven something here. Yeah. But for sure, I have more confidence in saying Penn State will drop down to those late teens and around that 18-20 area, which I think everyone can kind of nod and be like, that's realistic. Versus saying West Virginia won't make the top 25. That I'm unsure of, but that's what we're looking at right now with West Virginia with that upset.
Well, for example, your projected rankings for next week. Look, Georgia Tech's not in, like, they're 24th right now. But that didn't benefit their win over Florida State. Didn't benefit them as much as it hurt Florida State. So the same thing would happen for West Virginia that it would for Penn State.
Same thing, same exact thing. There's an equilibrium to the beginning of the year of what, like, hey, we don't really know, so you against you, that's kind of an even matchup. And I think we all kind of agree right now when it's early in the season, and really as the season goes on, it's any given Saturday, right? Anyone can beat anybody, and it's a coin flip. Now, when we ran our simulations for the week, we really saw that, for example, Georgia has roughly an 81% chance of staying at the number 1 seed. Why is that? Well, Georgia against Clemson, they're giving Clemson a 20% chance of winning. Vegas, according to the Vegas odds, it's about an 80-20 split between Georgia winning and Clemson winning. So there are weird scenarios where Georgia doesn't stay at the number 1 seed because they don't look good or they fall down a little bit, whatever that case may be. So even on, like, really Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, they're kind of playing cupcakes this week, so they're probably going to stay there. There's nothing that's really going to we can tell that's a true mismatch. But even for something like Penn State and West Virginia, that's kind of a 60-40 split maybe. No one's really leaning heavy on Penn State thinking that that's not going to be a close game.
Yeah. This is all just really cool stuff. And let me put up the website in our chat for people, because we have – look, I'll tell you, we've got some nerds, buddy. We've got some nerds. And
I love it.
I say that word is never an insult to me.
Oh, no,
no.
When you're a kid, that's an insult. As you get later in life, someone calls you a nerd, you kind of take that with a badge of honor.
It means you have passion.
It means you have probably a better way.
It means you have commitment to something.
Right.
That's what it means.
Exactly.
So to get all this, and I'm thinking about it just from the input perspective. Like you said, it took 2 years. Going back historically in, trying to put a number on why things, like you said, are human things. Like, here's what happens when these are. That had to, like, maybe even take you. Like, did you have to take walks and stuff to be like, man, this is hard to take from human being emotion to math and correlate it?
You try and take as much human out of it. There is human component in it. If anyone were to tell you going into last year, Florida State is going to be undefeated, they're going to win their conference, are they making the playoff? It's a no-brainer, yes.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't it be? It didn't happen because people have emotions and opinions, and it's not just about where somebody is ranked. Now, this year, it eases the tension a little bit with that 12-game playoff, but there is a human component that you can't take out of it, and I will never be able to take out of it. But a majority of the variance of data, a very nerdy way to say that, is, can you grab as much of it as you possibly can to explain why these things are happening? Long walks, yes. And just the fun thing to really do when you're building these algorithms is you don't look at your best picks, you look at your worst ones and say, why would that happen? And then you try and dig and uncover and really figure out, this is exactly why that team didn't make it. Well, what's really interesting, going back to that Florida State example, is I played around with that a ton and said, could we have predicted that? And one of the things that I found in the what if simulator is, if you have Louisville winning that game against Florida State last year, the rankings look almost identical to what actually happened in reality. So there's the human element right there. The people on the college football selection committee poll viewed that as a loss. It was their opportunity to say, prove it to us that you can beat this team without a real quarterback behind under center. And they didn't do it. And so how my algorithm treated that, if you go in the what if and have them losing that game to Louisville, it's almost identical to what you actually saw in reality. So to me, it helps explain some of the human emotion behind it too, and say we can't put a number on it, but we can maybe go into the minds of what these people are thinking while they're actually creating these polls. And according to the College Football Selection Committee, when they made that poll, they treated it like an FSU loss, not a win, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, well, it's totally crazy. It's insane.
Right.
It is. I mean, my theory is Greg Sankey found, like, the minute that Jordan Travis kicked his leg up in the air and you were like, well, that's it for him. He's like, well, there's my narrative right there.
Right.
And then he just kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And then other people kind of pick up on it. And then they go in and like, well, we got to see if they can do this. And you're like, well, you've never actually applied the same logic to anyone else ever.
Correct.
And so when it happened, again, they treating a win like a loss. You know, I will tell you the only other time it did happen is, and this is one that we lived here in Waco, was Baylor beat TCU, lost to West Virginia, and they didn't like get blown out by West Virginia. They just lost to a mediocre West Virginia team on the road in Morgantown, and then because the Big 12 was like, well, no, I know TCU has a loss and it's to Baylor, but their loss is better than Baylor's loss. And you're like, well, hold on a minute. Like, wait a minute. Like, let's just go back here. Like, their loss is to Baylor. So, like, if the value at a win and a loss is +1, -1, but a loss to it, like, just even, right? So if they both lost to West Virginia, they both would have gotten a -1.
Exactly, and you can go even deeper into strength of schedule. Like it's never ending. You're never you can never really pinpoint it. Same thing happened a couple years ago in that 2021 season that Kenneth Walker III ran for like 5 touchdowns against Michigan. Then the next week, Michigan State lost to Purdue, I want to say, and Michigan won. And then when the next release of the rankings came out, Michigan was ahead of Michigan State. And everyone just said, but like 2 weeks ago, Michigan State just beat Michigan. Why would they? It's just the way that they kind of felt about it. And same thing with the FSU thing. If you look at the transcripts, which once again, complete nerd diving into this thing, I'm reading what they're saying about why they ranked the way that they did. And they have these transcripts available for anyone who didn't know. Yeah. And what they said about Florida State was, well, it's a weird year. There's like 5 or 6 really good teams, which is true. If you look at the previous years prior to last year, there's like 3, maybe 4 solid teams that no one will dispute. Last year, there was 5 or 6. You have Texas and Alabama who are at 7 or 8 going into that the finals or their conference championship. They're sneaking all the way in because they still have a stellar resume. If Texas doesn't loses that game against Kansas State where they nailed a field goal at the very end, I don't think that Florida State has anything to worry about at that point because you're not going to allow that to happen. That would be insane. But maybe I'm wrong. It's a human element to this, and we the United States college athletics, whatever you want to call it. This is the only place where this happens. You know what's going to be the outcome. Could you imagine if in Kansas City, if Mahomes got hurt, they said, hey, we're really sorry, but we're going to put the Broncos in because you without Mahomes is not the real thing anymore. That would be absurd. But this is how we're stuck with in college football because you have these weird conferences and strength of schedule. So it's all over the place. But that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Payton Soicher, rankings right now. Go to the website, log in, create it. It's awesome. It's great. Payton, we're gonna do some like check-ins with you. Like we'll go through things once we have like let's get some numbers in there so we're not even though that's what you do, but like let's see that so we know where to ford the river, so to speak. But Payton, really enjoy this segment. Garrett has been glued to this.
Yep.
Yeah,
I've been learning out myself.
I love it.
So
please, any feedback that you guys have, it's a brand new website. I'm open to anything. I want your experience to be enhance and enjoy it and make it fun. It's eye candy. This isn't going to change anyone's lives. This is to make it more fun and to add another context to the conversation when people talk about college football.
Yeah, absolutely. Payton, thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon, buddy.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
Payton Soicher, rankingsrightnow.com.